Hey everyone, Jamie here from TechnicalCafe.com, and in this tutorial we're going to be talking about functions in PHP. So a function, or sometimes called a method depending on what programming language you're using, is basically a way to write a block of code that does something, and then you can reuse that block of code elsewhere within your program. And the cool thing about functions too is that you can actually pass data into them via an argument in your function, and use that data to dynamically alter your function in some way, or manipulate that data, etc. So let's go ahead and take a look at a couple of function examples here, just to show you how we can go about using them. So the first thing we're going to do is actually declare a function, and we're going to say function, and then we're going to follow that up with the name of the function we'd like to create. So in this case, let's create a function that prints a welcome message to the screen. So we're going to say welcome MSG, and then we're going to follow that up with a parameter list here, and we'll leave it empty for right now. And then we're going to open up a code block here. So within this code block is where we're going to write the code that will execute when we call or run our function. So in this case, all we want to do is print a welcome message to the screen. So let's just say echo, and we'll say welcome to a PHP tutorial on functions. And when we save this and then jump over to Google Chrome to see what happens, you'll notice that nothing happens when we refresh. And the reason for that is because we didn't actually call the function, we only created it. So if we jump back over here to Atom, you'll see that all of our code is here. We didn't get any error messages in Chrome, but what we didn't do was actually call the function or tell the server that we'd like to run the code within our welcome message function here. So in order to do that, all you have to do is just type in the function's name and then follow it with a parameter list there, or argument list. And then what we're going to do is run that and see what happens. Alright, so when we refresh, you'll notice that we have a welcome to a PHP tutorial on functions text that prints to the screen, and that's exactly what we want. That's what we wrote in our function, so that function works just fine. Let's try another example. So let's delete that. And what we're going to do is create a function that takes in some input in the form of an argument. So in order to do that, let's say function, and in this case, we're going to make a function that prints the user's name to the screen. So we'll make it say hello name. And in order to do that, let's say hello, call our function that, and then we'll open up a code block. And because we want to take user input into our function, what we're going to do is add an argument to this parameter list here. So in order to do that, we'll just create a variable and call it name. And then what we can do is then reference this name variable within the body of our function. So let's go ahead and say, let's echo out hello, and then we'll concatenate on the value of name. So when we go to run this function, what we're going to have to do this time though is insert a variable or insert some text into the name argument. Otherwise we'll receive an error. So let's go ahead and call this function. So we'll say hello, and we'll try it without an argument in here just to show you what happens. So if we jump over to Chrome, refresh, you'll notice that we get a warning here because we're missing an argument for this say hello function. It does print the hello part, so the function still runs, but the variable itself that gives the name in the function isn't there. So let's jump over to Atom, and we'll put a name in here. So we'll say, put in my name, Jamie, save it, jump back over to Chrome, and you'll notice that our function works. We have our argument printed out to the screen, and all is good. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is take in a numeric argument. So let's create a new function, and we'll call this one square num, and we're going to take in an argument, so let's just call it input, and then we'll open up a code block. And as you probably guessed, this function here is just going to take a number and square it. So what we're going to do this time though, that we didn't do in the last two functions, is create a return value. So when we call our function isn't going to print a value to the screen automatically like we have with these two functions. It's going to return a value. So let's go ahead and say return, and we're going to take our input and multiply it by itself to square it. So if we save this, or actually let's go ahead and call the function, so square num, and let's say put in the number 3. So we should get a value of 9 when we refresh and take a look. But you'll notice we have nothing here. So there's no error message, so things are still working, but what happened is we only returned the value, we didn't actually print it to the screen. So in order to get this value to print out, what you can do is just echo out the function itself. So the function will run, and then whatever the function returns, you can use in the echo statement. And you can use this in other ways too. You don't just have to print it out. You can maybe, feed this function's result into another function, or whatever you want to do with it. So let's save this, jump back over to Chrome, and refresh, and you'll notice that we have the value of 9. When we put in 3, 3 times 3 is 9. Let's take one more example of a function here, and this is going to be a function that takes in 2 arguments. So let's say function, we'll call it addNum, and what we're going to do is have, let's say, num1 and num2. And if you're going to use multiple arguments, all you got to do is separate them with a comma in the argument or parameter list. So as you guessed, addNum is just going to add the 2 numbers together. So we're going to say return num1 plus num2. And we're going to come down here and call this function. So we're going to echo it out to addNum, say 1 and 2, so we should get the value of 3. And boom, we got the value of 3. We could, if we wanted to, just echo out the value here, so we could echo out num1 plus num2 and just call addNum. And we still get the same result. So it's basically, if you return something, you can then use that value elsewhere in your program. But this is the basics of a function, so feel free to play around with it a little bit. And if you have any questions, throw them in the comments section below. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.